Tonight, backlash to accusations of choosing speed over people while clearing city parks.
I think it's validating for a lot of people who are doing a lot of advocacy around the encampments, who are really struggling to get the truth out.
A scathing indictment from the city's ombudsman of how police rounded up people living in encampments. Tonight, what the city is saying in response. Plus,
it is the first government in decades who has sat down with us in a meaningful way to listen to us.
Eye doctors see a new deal with the province. Why scaling back the frequency seniors can get annual eye checkups in Ontario is being applauded tonight. And
we're looking at a long road to recovery.
Why a medical emergency has turned into a financial emergency for this international student and what the community here in Toronto is doing to help. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. Thanks for joining us on a Friday night. We begin with that scene that captivated the city a year and a half ago. Police on horseback and in riot gear violently clearing city parks of controversial encampments. Tonight, a report from Toronto's ombudsman found the city showed significant unfairness as it bulldozed those people. And while the city says it accepts the report, it did not respond to specific criticism of its operation. Talia Ricci begins our coverage tonight.
For those who lived it, reading the Ombudsman's new report on the encampment clearings brings up tough feelings.
Or a lot of the sort of, memories around what we went through.
Toronto's Ombudsman says the city chose speed over people when it forcefully cleared encampments in Trinity Bellwoods, Alexandra Park, and Lamport Stadium in 2021. It said the city chose to act quickly despite there being no urgency to do so.
We also found that the planning for the encampment clearings failed to account or allow for the provision of mental health supports, even though the city knew that many of the individuals living in encampments had mental health issues. There were communications issues. The city provided little communication information to the public about the encampments in general.
I think it's validating for a lot of people who are doing a lot of advocacy around the encampments, who are really struggling to get the truth out. I think that was a big part of it. I think that one thing the ombudsman, they talk about is like the harm and trauma that was caused to people, but it wasn't just harm and trauma, it also led to people's deaths.
This former street pastor says he thought the report was well done and thorough, but also wanted to see acknowledgement that the city's shelter system is overcrowded and that people stayed in encampments because there was nowhere else to go.
Because the city has decided to dismantle those spaces, it really literally led to people dying, to frostbitten limbs, to lost limbs, to frostbite, to really severe health outcomes. And I think the Ombudsman report, it had a mandate, it had different categories that it was investigating most thoroughly, but that could have fit in multiple places.
The report made 23 recommendations, including creating a diverse group to collaboratively lead the encampment response, prioritizing the needs of those living in encampments, and creating a detailed plan outlining physical and mental health supports.
The aim of my report and my recommendations is that the city acts on them as soon as possible. Once implemented, it's going to make things better for individuals who are living in encampments, and will make the process followed by the city more fair, more transparent.
In a statement, the city said it accepts the recommendations and will review the report in detail, but it did not respond to specific criticisms of its handling of the encampment clearings. It said the city is committed to the use of a people-first, client-centered approach to help connect those living in encampments with services including shelter and housing. The report will be presented at council. Advocates say they'll be watching.
We'll see how much or how many of the recommendations are actually followed.
There's no way to do real justice to the harms that were caused to people living in those encampments.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, councillor and mayoral hopeful Josh Matlow is under the spotlight tonight. Toronto's Integrity Commissioner says he violated the city's code of conduct for online comments critical of city staff.
Part of my job is to both support honest advice that comes from staff, but also when I don't believe it and when it's part of a political initiative, that I speak up.
Matlow reacting this afternoon after the Integrity Commissioner investigated 2 complaints related to his tweets from last year. The first came from former city manager Chris Murray. Last June, Matlow tweeted that he didn't, quote, appreciate being lied to about when park bathrooms would be open. The other complaint was made by then interim city manager Tracy Cook. Matlow voted against Cook's appointment to that role, and in July he tweeted that he believed the mayor and council chose the wrong person to serve as acting city manager. The Integrity Commissioner found Matlow violated parts of the city's code of conduct, including its anti-harassment policy. The commissioner recommends council reprimand Matlow and suspend his pay for 10 days. To provincial politics now, and a senior member of the Ford government is calling it quits. Marilee Fullerton announced today she is stepping down as Minister of Children, Community and Social Services. She's also resigning as the MPP for Kanata Carleton. In a letter, Fullerton expressed appreciation to Premier Doug Ford, her cabinet colleagues and constituents. She did not give a reason for her resignation today, and her office declined comment. The Premier has picked Michael Parsa to replace her in cabinet. The province also releasing its annual Sunshine List today. The 3 highest paid public employees all work at Ontario Power Generation. Read the full list on our website at cbc.ca/Toronto. New tonight, the Ford government has struck a deal with the Ontario Association of Optometrists. And while it cuts back OHIP-covered checkups for most seniors, it increases access to care for those who need it most. Dale Manukduk has that story.
I get you to cover your left eye here.
For years, Ontario governments have covered both eyes when it came to optometrists.
In terms of the payment that we had, it wasn't increased over 30 years, so which is crazy to think about.
Starting April 1st, payments to optometrists will increase for some OHIP-insured services, and on September 1st, there will be service changes. Currently, all seniors are eligible for 1 OHIP-covered eye exam every 12 months. That's changing to 18 months. However, those with certain conditions like glaucoma or diabetes will remain annual. Health Minister Sylvia Jones says people of all ages will continue to be connected to high-quality and publicly funded eye care that better reflects the latest best practices and expert advice.
It is the first government in decades who has sat down with us in a meaningful way to listen to us.
According to the Ontario Association of Optometrists, there are patients who didn't have access to care who are now covered.
Patients who have inflammation in the eye, previously, their first occurrence was not covered. And so there were adults that weren't getting coverage that now will have coverage. Patients who were, like I said, on medications that have ocular side effects.
So how do people affected by these changes feel?
This is good for people.
Well, I'm a senior, and I don't have any issue.
The move brings Ontario more in line with other provinces. The Canadian Association of Retired Persons calls the deal a win for all sides.
Under the previous arrangement, optometrists really couldn't afford to offer the kind of eye care that seniors need.
And here, do we like 1 here or 2?
The new deal took over a year to negotiate and is about an 8% increase in funding to optometrists.
I'm happy that we've struck a final decision. I think there's a lot more to go and negotiate moving forward.
Optometrists are already looking ahead to when the 4-year funding agreement runs its course and can improve compensation and service even more. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
And help for seniors tackling rising costs was the focus of the finance minister's trip to Scarborough today. Still out there trying to sell yesterday's provincial budget. Lorenda Redekop has that part of our coverage tonight.
For months, people have been shelling out more money due to a higher cost of living. Today, the finance minister was out with the Minister for Seniors talking about an item from his budget to give more money to low-income seniors.
To expand eligibility of the Gains program starting in July of 2024 so that 100,000 additional seniors would be eligible for this program.
But it's the only budget item that directly offers money for people, not businesses, at a time when interest rates and inflation have risen. One mortgage broker says of his clients, so far the hardest hit are those with variable mortgages, paying more than 40% extra compared to a year ago.
That's a big jump. I mean, there's a lot of big mortgages in Ontario. People with $500,000 mortgages, they're looking at $1,800 a month increases. I mean, it's a lot. It's difficult.
And he says more mortgage holders will likely be facing extra financial stress, with more than 1 million coming up for renewal in Canada this year. Another cost that keeps rising, food, according to Stats Canada numbers. This week, Quebec added a tax break in its budget.
We actually think that now is not the moment to be offering broad-based transfers to households or to businesses.
While this economist approves of Ontario's sped-up path to balance, he says one more targeted option could have been to offer help specifically for low-income households. But giving extra money for everyone, he worries, would equal higher inflation, and he believes a recession is coming later this year.
We don't think that this will be a severe recession, certainly not relative to downturns we've seen in the past, but there is a risk, there is uncertainty. And for that reason, at this time, we think it is appropriate to be prudent with fiscal plans.
There is another chance Ontarians will be offered more help. The federal budget comes out next week. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Looking live at the skyline and already feeling a bit more chilly out there as we get set for this weekend's storm. Let's get right to Colette Kennedy for our first look at weather. And Colette, I am so glad that your forecast worked out as expected for today. Just a beautiful day to get outside.
And of course, doesn't it always work out as expected? All right, it was just a beautiful day today that we were able to enjoy that cloud in the morning hours, but high pressure, even though there was still cloud in the afternoon, it was that thinner layer and we had bright skies and some sun coming through. So temperatures not necessarily anything to write home about, pretty close to seasonal in most cases. But really what there will be something to write about is what's coming for tomorrow. Of course, we do have a major storm system that's going to be moving through, bringing all kinds of different conditions. So rainfall in the overnight hours into southwestern Ontario. Freezing rain will be back to the west, but that's really important because this will push into the province. We do have those areas with freezing rain warnings. I'm going to show you those coming up a little later in the show and get into all the details of the warnings and weather statements. Heavier rain through the Niagara region, winds in here as well. And even for the city, we may well see a bit of that mixing first, ice pellets and some freezing rain, but more so to the west of the GTA. And then that carries on and it thins out somewhat, that freezing rain layer. The rainfall for the city, 10 to 20 millimeters or so. Snow heavier into eastern Ontario, mostly a rain event in southwestern Ontario. But you too will be dealing with these very strong winds where they will be gusting over 70 kilometers an hour and over 90 in the Niagara region. So overnight tonight, that temperature at freezing, and that's why we get into some mixed precipitation. And then for tomorrow afternoon, the temperature rises, but it'll keep going up in the evening. And then it becomes that rainfall event, Chris.
Well, that is a lot coming our way. Thanks, Colette. A quick transit note for you. The sale of TTC tokens is officially over. Today was the last day they were being sold. Now, they actually haven't been available through the TTC itself since 2019. Instead, only available through third-party stores. While some low-income advocates are worried about the shift, the Transit Authority says more than 90% of transit riders already use Presto. Meanwhile, more TTC changes are coming this Sunday. Service will be cut by 10% for 36 bus routes, 2 subway routes, and 1 streetcar route. The TTC says wait times should only increase by 3 minutes at most. Now to a break. In an armed robbery investigation, Toronto police officers say they've arrested 6 suspects, including a 12-year-old girl and 3 teenaged boys.
There's been a noted increase of young persons applying their trade in robbery-related offenses. It's quite clear that due to the level of sophistication that's often seen, that there are obviously older persons behind this.
All right, so this investigation looked into 2 armed robberies at stores in the area of Van Horn and Victoria Park in early January. In both incidents, suspects brandished a handgun and assaulted an employee before leaving with cash, cigarettes, and various items from the store's shelves, according to police. 38-year-old Christine Dorsey, a 12-year-old girl, and 3 boys between 14 and 16 face charges including robbery with a firearm and disguise with intent. A 21-year-old man was also charged with possession of property obtained by crime. Welcome back. An international student's dream of studying here in Toronto has turned into a fight for survival after a sudden stroke. It's also left the 20-year-old's mother fighting to figure out how to pay for his medical bills. Ryan Patrick Jones shares their story.
Michael Londoño arrived in Canada in October last year. After serving in the military back home, he came here to learn English with hopes of one day getting into college. He was healthy and active until he suffered a severe hemorrhagic stroke last month, one day after his 20th birthday.
O sea, yo dije, esto es imposible. O sea, acabé de hablar con él, hablé toda la tarde, todo el día y me dejó, o sea, que es sumamente impactada porque pues por la edad de mi hijo, la calidad de vida que lleva él no es fácil de superar.
Sulma Sastre flew from central Colombia to be with her son. She says doctors at Toronto Western Hospital induced a coma and put her son on a ventilator. He underwent multiple surgeries and overcame a lung infection. Sastre says while he avoided brain damage, Michael still can't walk, talk, or breathe on his own. Meanwhile, his medical bills have soared to more than $330,000, but his insurance company says it will only cover 1/5.
Nosotros no tenemos sistema económico para pagar eso. O sea, realmente no lo tenemos. Y en Canadá, en Colombia, Michael, desde que se vino, tampoco tiene seguridad médica allá en Colombia. Entonces, en los dos lugares sería demasiado impactante. O sea,
we're looking at a long road to recovery.
This doctor with the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada, who is not directly involved in Michael's care, says severe stroke patients often require expensive 24-hour care and intensive rehabilitative therapy.
He's going to need, physical therapy, speech language therapy, as I've said, are the guidelines, the national guidelines around stroke recovery, say at least an hour a day of whatever therapies you need.
Sastre says she believes her son will get better care in Canada, but she's worried he'll be forced back to Colombia because she can't afford to pay out of pocket.
De esta deuda yo no estoy realmente preocupada. Estoy realmente preocupada para que sea pronto la asignación del nuevo hospital, o sea, que el sistema de salud de Canadá no me vaya a negar la recuperación de mi hijo.
In the meantime, Sastre's family has started a fundraising campaign online and organized a marathon on April 1st in Toronto, hoping to raise enough money to pay for her son's care. A spokesperson for the University Health Network wouldn't comment on Michael's case, but says the finance departments of its hospitals, including Toronto Western, work with uninsured patients on payment plans to recoup the costs of care. Ryan Patrick Jones, CBC News, Toronto.
Okay, let's get back to Colette Kennedy now for a look at the long-range forecast. And Colette, today's beauty weather got me thinking about pulling out my patio furniture, but given what's in store for this weekend, I'm thinking maybe I should hold off.
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea. And, not because of the different types of precipitation coming, but for just the reason of the winds, Chris, in terms of could be blowing away the cushions. We really need to make sure everything's kind of tied down for tomorrow because so many different things coming in. The areas in blue, we do have the special weather statements from Environment Canada, mixed conditions. Eastern Ontario, it's more snow, more rain for the city, but with strong winds back into southwestern Ontario and rainfall. So showing you where we actually have the freezing rain warning. It is a wide area. Yes, London included here, Kitchener, Waterloo. It goes up the Bruce Peninsula. And then it does extend down towards the north shore of Lake Ontario, but also in here, or Lake Erie, pardon me, we have the wind warning. And in that area, those winds towards Niagara could gust over 90 kilometers an hour. Elsewhere, they're going to be strong too, but just over 70 to 80. So yeah, quite a lot going on. And those winds really ramp up, especially in the afternoon hours and then into Sunday morning. So they do linger into Sunday morning. Let's play this through. We do have at least a quieter night through most of the overnight tonight. I say most of because in the wee overnight hours, it moves in as rainfall through the Windsor area, a bit of a mix towards Sarnia. Then we see those ice pellets and freezing rain getting very close to the GTA and in fact extending over towards Hamilton, also in the freezing rain warning here. And that's where we have the greatest risk for the longest period of time, for a few hours of seeing freezing rain or at least slippery road conditions. Comes into the city as well, starts as some wet snow or that mix, and then the temperature rises above freezing and it becomes rainfall. Where it stays as snow longer Eastern Ontario is where we get into the more significant accumulations of snowfall. And even on the backside of this, there's still some wet flurries, but we will clear out and see things improve pretty rapidly into Sunday. What will be left behind in green, you're seeing the numbers that are the rainfall amounts, or at least around this range. That may be a bit high for Hamilton because some of this may be ice that's then melting. And then towards Ottawa, yeah, up to 10 centimeters of snow in blue there. All right, those winds, checking those out as those go driving through. And you see some of those continue into early Sunday morning, and we'll be dealing with that too, those overnight temperatures. And then just the quickest look I want to give you at what's going on. That temperature up to 6 in the afternoon tomorrow, but Chris, it goes up to 9 in the evening. And then after that, maybe you can put out your patio furniture.
All right, what a wild ride. Thanks, Colette. Finally tonight, Leaf fans, you may want to plug your ears for this last one, getting chirped from no less than the U.S. president.
I have to say, I like your teams except the Leafs. Tell you why. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. They beat the Flyers back in January. That's why.
Yeah, well, so did every Canadian team, Joe. But come on. Joe Biden, of course, making that jab this afternoon in Ottawa. It was his first official visit to the capital since becoming president more than 2 years ago. It was packed with meetings, photo ops, but apparently he found time to make that jab. And thank you for making time for joining us tonight. Have a great weekend, everyone. I'll see you back here on Monday night at 11. Have a great night.